Hello, welcome to this, the first episode of our 2018 EGX Indie Views, a smaller side where we bring you some quick chats with some of the coolest indie developers that we met on the show floor of EGX 2018, with some of the coolest projects that we got to experience and play while we were there. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, every week of November, we're going to bring you a brand new chat from an indie developer fresh from the show floor of EGX 2018. Each one is vastly different from the next, and hopefully each one has some really valuable insight into what it's like to be an indie developer and where their ideas come from. I want to take a minute now to talk about this week's episode and the reason we chose it to be a part of this show. My first day on the EGX show floor was not what I expected it would be. It was a very busy day that was very stressful and very hectic, and I didn't actually get to step on to the EGX show floor until a good 4 hours later than I thought I would. I stepped on to the show floor and immediately took in the sights around me, because EGX is one of my favourite places to be every year. I took in the sights, I took in the people, and then I realised that I had 4 hours less than I wanted to get as many interviews as I'd like. So I started looking around the indie section. I looked and noticed game here and game there and game this and game that and game the other, but nothing was sticking out to me. I just wasn't in the right place. And then I stumbled on this game, and I looked at its screen for 2 seconds with its bright, vibrant colours, and Max, the developer who you'll hear from in a second, stepped over to me and said, "Would you like to take a break from reality?" I couldn't say yes hard enough. That was exactly what I needed. 2 or 3 minutes of just nothing. 2 or 3 minutes of just pure video game exploration. So I sat down, I put the headphones on, I stared into the screen, and for a couple of minutes, all the stress, everything disappeared. It was lovely. I chatted to Max afterwards. I recorded this interview with him, but Max's game really got me back into the feeling of EGX this year. It really helped me capture some of my favourite interviews that we've ever recorded, and some of the best games I think we've ever seen at an EGX, and it made sure that I had some of the most fun I've had at an EGX since we started doing these. So I'd like to present to you, very proudly, Zero North, Zero West, a game about exploring different artistic landscapes, different colour schemes and colour spaces, and just generally something that fucks with your brain a little bit, but in a good way. So I'll hand you back now to myself in the past and Max, recorded live on the show floor of EGX. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one of the first of our EGX interviews, although I don't know when you're hearing it, but it's one of the first that I've conducted, and I am joined by
Max. From Color Fiction.
From Color Fiction, a very, very appropriate developer name for your title, which is called Zero Northwest.
Zero North, Zero West.
It's Zero North, Zero West.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
like cardinal points, like a coordinates for a place of nowhere.
I like that. So it's like 0-0 on a map.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this 0-0 on your map. Tell me a little bit about what Zero North, Zero West is.
So it's a game about just general surreality and exploring dream worlds, and hence the name. It's a place of nowhere, a place beyond our expectations of reality. And
so the game itself, it's so hard to describe, because what pulled me over to it is that it's incredibly bright. It's incredibly vibrant, and it's
Thank you.
Every year on EGX, there's a couple of games that from a mile away, the screen kind of screams at you, and Zero North, Zero West is one of those. So where did the aesthetic come from? Because we can talk about the game in a second, but I think with your history that you were telling me about, the aesthetic's very important to you and what you're doing. So where did that come about?
So yeah, I used to do architecture, and the main problem, architecture is wonderful, but the problem I had was that there's always a budget and gravity limiting anything that you want to create. And so I always enjoyed making very otherworldly spaces and aesthetics. And so with this game, I wanted to have no inhibitions in terms of what I could create. So I tried to make complete dreamlike spaces, and I'm drawing a lot from the art world, the futurism movement, Kandinsky, I guess Russian deconstructivism, just general that period in time, from 1910 to 1940s of very crazy visual styles, and so in a way it's like a three-dimensional exploration of that era and of paintings.
Wow.
And also grabbing a lot of inspiration from general graphics cards errors, or when the computer glitches out. And so that's another big aesthetic that I've used throughout the game.
So when you play Zero North, Zero West, you start off. You told me that you start on a road trip.
Yes.
And you stop and find a door.
Yes.
And you go through the door, and it leads you to a world of craziness.
Yes.
And a world of craziness is a perfect way to describe it. There's all sorts of aesthetics so far. I've seen stuff that looks like an endless sea of sand. I've seen stuff that looks like Blade Runner-esque cities. I've seen things that look like glitch art, as you describe. How difficult is it to imagine one of those things and then bring them to life?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
It's so a lot of the spaces were pre-designed. I would just draw them and then slowly bring them about. There's many steps because a lot of the aesthetics is also generated by the way that we use hardware and shaders, and so a lot of it is testing the boundaries of what code can do and purposefully glitching the graphics card.
Right.
Grabbing a shader and trying to write it in the other way around so that it doesn't actually work the way it's intended to, but it starts to generate visual artifacts, and that's a lot of that I am using in the game. But so it's an exploration of my preconceived ideas of what I want the game to be, and also through trial and experimentation that the final aesthetic of each level comes across. But before it, there's obviously a lot of 3D modeling, so I start drawing, and then I 3D model everything, and then I bring it all together in Unity, and then I start adding all the different visual effects that are generated by where you are or just general. And so a lot of it is exploration, as you're coding and whatnot.
So in a way, what you do is take what some developers might consider almost accidental,
yes,
and turn it into a genuine part of a game.
Yes, that's very correct. Yeah, in many ways, every little happy accident that happens in development, I save it and write down how it happened, and then I try to maximize its incidence, I guess, on everything.
So in a way, Zero North, Zero West is a deliberate game made of happy accidents.
Yes. In many ways, yes.
That's lovely.
And a lot of late nights of working and, and a
happy
lot of
accidents and very hard work.
Exactly, yeah. But when the happy accidents happen, it's amazing. Yeah.
So what really struck me about it is that you called me over by saying, would you like to take a break from reality? And suffice to say, today has been fairly stressful, but it was really quite meditative. And it struck me while I was playing it that games don't really have a meditative form as of yet. We certainly have games that are relaxing, and we certainly have ways that we interact with them away from the world, but something like this where it's peaceful, and deliberately so, is often hard to find, because even the most peaceful of games have an intention. There's something driving you forward.
Yes.
Do you think, in a way, that by removing some of the more conventional mechanics of games, we might move towards a place where we can find games almost as a relaxation technique rather than a hobby?
No, I definitely think that's possible. That was part of the intent. When I was making the game, I wanted to do an anti-game of sorts where, it's a funny way of putting it, but
no,
it's...
but it is perfect, because that is a perfect description of what it is to play, yeah.
Yes, there's no objectives, there's no time limits, no actual danger, and it just rewards exploration. And I thought that, we're in a golden age of video games where not only have we seen many different versions of what gaming could be, but now that it's accessible to everybody to create, the technology keeps getting, more and more accessible. We're seeing a new expression of what games could be, because it's just a medium, and we can do anything with it. So, this is an experiment. I don't know if it'll be successful or not, but I've definitely enjoyed making it, and yeah.
Well, that has to count for something, right? That massively counts for something. So when should we expect to be putting our hands on Zero North, Zero West?
Okay, so it's on scheduled to be released on Steam for Windows and Linux and OS X, and that will probably be around January.
Okay.
And then about a month later, it's going to be accessible for all VR.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
I was going to ask you if this was a VR game, because it so looks like one, but yeah.
Yes, it's definitely in the works, and I already have a couple levels prototype for VR.
Oh, wow.
I just need to, the way things are rendered have to change for the full VR mode. So it's probably going to take me a month or two of working before I can release it. And then eventually for the Switch,
oh, cool.
Yeah, I've already talked with Nintendo, and I have to raise funds to buy a dev kit before I can release for the Nintendo Switch.
Okay, so you are the first Switch game we've interviewed of EGX, so congratulations.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still not on the Switch, but
okay.
it will be by the end of next year if, the stars shine rightly. And
and if people wanted to find more information about the game out, where would you suggest they go?
Okay, they can go to 0 North 0 West altogether.com.
Just think of it like 0, 0 on a map. That's 0 North, 0 West. Thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem.
It's been an absolute
This was
pleasure.
really fun.
Good. I'm really glad. Thank you.
Okay. Have
Cheers,
fun today.
See you later. Whether it be exploration, whether it be architecture, whether it be glitch art, whether it be colorscapes, or whether it just be a new form of meditation, maybe 0 North, 0 West has something it can offer you as well. And I hope that you found what Max had to say about indie development and his game interesting. I can tell you that I certainly did. Next week, we'll have a brand new interview from a different game for you, and as I said, every week for the month of October, as we do every year. Thank you very much for joining us for the first week of EGX 2018 Indie Views, and we'll see you next week. Until then, the game's up.